Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. I heard her laugh before I saw her face. Not the kind she used to save for me, soft, involuntary, full of warmth, but a different kind. Sharp, detached. It came from our bedroom. I was just heading to the kitchen for a glass of water. It was late. I didn't mean to listen. But you don't walk past your own bedroom and ignore that kind of sound. Her voice followed. Low, intimate. Not for me. I don't even want to hug him anymore, she said, and then laughed again. Like that thought didn't belong to a marriage, like it was a line from some distant memory she barely respected. I froze. She was on the bed, phone pressed to her cheek, legs swinging lazily behind her like a teenager sharing secrets. My wife. I know, she whispered. It's just, when he touches me, I feel nothing. Like I'm tolerating it. It's not exciting. Silence. Then that laugh again, quieter this time. Knowing. Of course I want to. I just have to be careful. He's not stupid. I was still holding my glass. Still breathing. But everything inside me had already gone cold. I didn't storm in. Didn't yell. Didn't interrupt. I just turned and walked back down the hallway. That night, I stopped being her husband. She thought I'd react the way she predicted. Rage, confrontation, tears, begging. That's what she was preparing for. That's what her little performance was about. But I wasn't going to give her what she expected. No, I was going to give her something worse. Silence. The next morning, I made 1 cup of coffee. Mine. Ate breakfast alone. Didn't ask if she wanted any. She wandered into the kitchen half awake, phone already in hand. Morning, she said. I nodded. She blinked, confused by the lack of follow-up. You okay? I smiled. The kind of smile that says nothing. Yeah, why wouldn't I be? She studied me for a beat, expecting something. A question. A reaction. A need. She didn't get one. Because in that hallway, I'd realized something. If she was already gone emotionally, then I didn't owe her the decency of pretending we were still us. From now on, I would be polite. I would be calm. I would be the shadow of a man she once knew. And when it was time to move, I wouldn't knock over the table. I'd pull the rug out from under it. She didn't notice it at first. That was the most revealing part. For days, she kept moving through the house like nothing had shifted. Like our routine was intact. Like she hadn't whispered betrayal into her phone while lying in our bed. She made coffee only for herself now. She used to make too. She didn't comment on that. She didn't ask why her favorite protein bars were missing from the pantry or why the thermostat was no longer set to her exact preference. She thought I was just in a mood. She had no idea I was done. She went about her mornings in that casual, curated way she'd perfected over the years, sliding into leggings, sipping green juice, scrolling endlessly while the news murmured in the background. She kissed my cheek once, half absent, like it was some residual habit. I didn't flinch. I didn't lean in. I let her kiss air. And she didn't notice. That's when I knew she wasn't just emotionally absent. She was practically blind to me. Our conversation shrank to necessities. She'd toss out lines like, "Can you get almond milk?" Or, "I'll be home late." No follow-up. No questions. No sense of shared space. She didn't realize I'd stopped responding to her in full sentences. She didn't hear the silence because she wasn't listening. Once, we used to read each other's moods across a room. Now, she could walk past me in the hallway and not even register that I hadn't spoken in days. That's what scared me the most. Not that she was cheating. Not even that she was lying. It was that I had become background noise, and she had grown used to it. I tried to trace it back. To some earlier moment. A fork in the road we didn't know we took. I remembered a time she used to run her fingers through my hair while I read. A time she'd laugh at my dumb jokes. A time she called me her favorite place. Now, I was furniture. A fixture. Something reliable she didn't think twice about. And maybe that's on me. Maybe I made it too easy for her to forget I was a person. But that phase was over now. I wasn't going to raise my voice. I wasn't going to accuse. That would have given her something to push against, something to use. No, I was going to make her feel something worse. Absence. Emotional. Financial. Rhythmic. The kind of absence that makes people question their own importance. The kind that quietly rewrites power. Because I wasn't trying to win her back. I was already gone. You know what nobody tells you? That betrayal doesn't always come with lipstick on a collar or unfamiliar cologne on the sheets. Sometimes, it sounds like a casual laugh behind a half-closed door. And the worst part is, it doesn't even shock you. Because deep down, some part of you is already known. For weeks. Months. maybe longer. I started replaying things. Not just the obvious cracks, but the smaller ones. The moments I brushed off as stress or fatigue. Like the way she stopped asking how my meetings went, but still remembered her favorite influencer's dog's name. Or how she'd schedule Pilates and girls' brunches but forget every date night I tried to plan. Like how she started using the phrase, "I need space," in conversations that had nothing to do with physical distance. "I'm just finding myself right now," she'd said once, while deleting texts from her phone just a little too fast. At the time, I didn't question it. I wanted to be supportive. Because that's what you do when you believe in someone. When you think the relationship is a season, not a sentence. But I see it clearly now. She wasn't evolving. She was exiting. And I was the last to know. It's funny how hindsight sharpens everything. The subtle eye rolls. The long silences. The delayed goodnights. They weren't mood swings. They were strategies. She wasn't just pulling away. She was preparing for life without me. Emotionally. Physically. Financially. And now, I was preparing for life without her. Not out of spite. Out of self-preservation. I started making notes. Not just mental. Real ones. I created a list of everything I did. Every bill in my name. Every shared login. Every subscription she used but never paid for. The invisible labor of a partner who'd been running the engine while she sat in the passenger seat, scrolling. She called it control. I called it commitment. Big difference. And still, a part of me wasn't angry. Not really. I was numb. Disillusioned. Because what hurt wasn't that she was with someone else. What hurt was how easily she let me become no one. No closure. No explanation. Just a slow, calculated fade. That's the kind of wound that doesn't bleed. It freezes. But I wasn't going to sit in the cold. I was going to walk through it. And the next step? Letting her believe nothing had changed. Because that's when the real shift happens. Not when you shout, but when you go silent. It happened on a Sunday. Late afternoon. Overcast sky. One of those days where time moves slower, like the universe knows something is about to shift. She was on the couch, legs curled, laptop balanced on her knees. I was making dinner. Not for her. For me. I'd stopped asking what she wanted days ago. And then she said it. Not dramatically. Not cruelly. Just offhand. Like it was some random comment. She glanced up from the screen and said, "You know, sometimes I feel like I'm trapped here. Like I'm performing a version of me you created." I didn't answer right away. I stirred the pan, let the words settle in the air. She didn't stop there. I need to feel like myself again. Not someone's wife. Not someone's responsibility. Just me. That was the moment. Not because of what she said, but because of how she said it. Like she was practicing a speech she'd been rehearsing in the mirror. Like she needed me to nod so she could justify what came next. She wanted permission, not honesty. But I wasn't going to give her either. Instead, I looked over and said, "So what does that look like to you? Being yourself again?" She shrugged. Freedom. Time. Space. And then she said the sentence that changed everything. "I want to try living alone for a while. Not forever. Just a trial separation. A reset." She called it a reset. Like our marriage was a router she needed to unplug and plug back in. I nodded once. Not slowly. Not quickly. Just enough to let her know I heard. She seemed surprised by the lack of resistance. I didn't ask where she was going. I didn't ask who was helping her figure this out. Because I already knew. The late nights. The perfume that wasn't for me. The text messages she laughed at and deleted without blinking. His name hadn't come up yet. But his presence was already in the room. She was too careful not to mention him. That's how I knew he mattered. I could have asked. I could have demanded answers. But what would have been the point? She'd already packed him into her future. I just wasn't part of the blueprint anymore. That night, she made herself a cup of tea and went upstairs without saying goodnight. And I stayed in the kitchen, staring at the leftover pasta on the stove. Not heartbroken. Not furious. Just done. She had given her monologue. And now, it was my turn to plan the finale. But mine wouldn't come with dramatic speeches. It would come with precision. Because if she wanted freedom, she was going to get it. But not the way she expected. The next morning, I called out sick from work. Not because I was emotional. Because I needed space to move in silence. She was still asleep upstairs, curled in the same bed we used to call ours. I watched the light seep in through the blinds and made a list quiet, clinical, precise. Bank accounts. Passwords. Documents. Insurance. Titles. We'd built everything together. But now I was dismantling it alone. No alarms. No red flags. She still thought this was her story, her journey, her decision. And that was the advantage. I spent the day in our home office with headphones on, browser tabs open like weapons on standby. Changed my direct deposit. Transferred savings. Canceled the credit card she never paid but always used. By noon, she was downstairs, dressed for yoga. Tight leggings, full face of makeup, like she was going to a photo shoot, not a stretch class. She tossed me a half smile. Feeling better? I nodded. She didn't ask why I hadn't gone in. She didn't care. Which made things easier. She grabbed her keys and left. I stared at the door 5 seconds longer than I needed to. Then I opened another tab. Lawyer. I wasn't filing. Not yet. But I was arming myself with information. Knowledge is power. And I needed leverage just in case her trial separation wasn't as temporary as she claimed. She wanted independence. She was about to learn what that really meant. No more joint safety net. No more invisible labor. No more husband holding her life together from the shadows. I cooked for myself again that night. Steak. Medium rare. Glass of red. She came back late, hair slightly messy, makeup still too perfect. She said nothing. Neither did I. Just nodded once and went back to my book. She hesitated, like she wanted to provoke something. A question. A dig. A crack in the wall. But there was nothing to reach for anymore. She wasn't living with a husband now. She was living with a mirror. And soon, she'd have to face what she actually saw in it. It took her 5 days to notice the silence wasn't temporary. That I wasn't sulking or playing some passive-aggressive game. I had simply stepped out of orbit. She came into the living room one evening, hair wet from the shower, robe loosely tied, holding her phone like it was an extension of herself. She looked at me, then at the untouched second mug on the coffee table. You didn't make tea? I looked up from my laptop. I didn't know if you'd be home. Her brows twitched, just slightly. A reaction. A fracture. She didn't respond right away. Instead, she hovered. Watching. Waiting. Like she was trying to figure out if I was serious, or if this was some kind of test she didn't study for. I was with Emily, she said eventually. I nodded. No sarcasm. No follow-up. She stood there another beat, then turned and walked upstairs. That was the moment I knew she felt it. The vacuum. The sudden drop in relevance. She'd been used to holding court, center of attention, even in apathy. But now, my energy wasn't orbiting her anymore. It was grounded, directed, private. She tried again the next morning. You want eggs? I was thinking of making some. I thanked her. But I'd already eaten. She blinked, nodded, went back to the fridge like she didn't care. But the way she closed the door, just a little too fast, gave it away. This wasn't indifference anymore. This was confusion. She thought she knew how to manage me. She thought I was predictable. That I'd always be the reliable one, the background comfort she could drift from and return to whenever life got complicated. But I had stopped being background. Now I was a variable. And she didn't like that. She started sending texts again. Small ones. Mundane. Do you need anything from the store? What time will you be home? I answered, but only when necessary. Clear. Polite. Unemotional. And the more distant I became, the more carefully she moved. That's how power works. Not through noise, but through control of attention. She wasn't in charge of mine anymore. And the woman who once demanded space was now starting to fear what it felt like. She made the first real mistake on a Thursday. I was supposed to be out late, networking event, drinks after, the usual calendar filler she never paid attention to. But I came home early. No reason. Just a hunch. The house was dim. Quiet. Her car was in the driveway. Inside, I heard music. Something soft, rhythmic, not her usual playlist. And then laughter. Not hers. A man's. It was faint, but unmistakable. I didn't slam the door. I didn't shout her name. I walked slowly through the hallway, careful not to step too loud. They were in the kitchen. I could see them reflected in the dark glass of the oven. He was leaning against the counter, smiling. She was pouring wine, barefoot, her body angled toward him the way it used to be angled toward me. She said something I couldn't hear. Then he touched her wrist. Not dramatically. Not possessively. Just familiar. I stepped back before they saw me. Went upstairs. Sat on the edge of the bed. My pulse was steady. Breathing even. Because I wasn't surprised. Not anymore. I heard the front door open again 30 minutes later. Just her steps this time. She came upstairs, called out a casual, hey, like I hadn't just watched her serve wine to a man who wasn't me in the kitchen we built together. I didn't respond. She found me in the bedroom, phone in hand, back against the headboard. Everything okay? She asked. I looked up. You tell me. That stopped her. She studied me. Blinked. What do you mean? I smiled. Not kindly. She waited. Expected a confrontation. A demand. A jealous outburst she could spin into self-defense. But I gave her nothing. Just silence. She cracked first. He's just a friend. He needed a favor. Nothing happened. I didn't correct her. Didn't mention the wine. Didn't ask why she was in full makeup at 6 p.m. on a weeknight. Instead, I put down my phone, stood up slowly, and walked past her without a word. She turned to follow. Called my name. I kept walking. Because that was the beginning of her unraveling. The moment she realized I didn't need proof. I had already decided. And now, it was her turn to wait. The days after that were quiet. But not peaceful. She tried to reset, like it never happened. Cooked one of my favorite meals. Wore a sweater I once said I liked. Asked if I wanted to watch something together that night. I said I was tired. She nodded, lips tightening, and disappeared into her side of the house. She was spinning now slowly, but certainly. Second-guessing what I knew. When I knew it, how much I'd actually seen. Wondering if I was waiting to explode, or if I never would. She couldn't tell. And that was the point. Because unpredictability is power. And I wasn't hers to read anymore. She started checking my phone when I left it charging. I knew because the passcode prompt was showing again after I just unlocked it. She began asking more questions. Little ones. You working late again? Where were you yesterday? You okay? I answered every one, calmly, clearly, without edge. But I never offered more than necessary. She didn't know where I was really going, or who I was talking to, because I had stopped narrating my life for her. And the silence made her nervous. She used to treat me like background. Now she was watching me like I was the one slipping away. Which, of course, I was. I'd already spoken to the lawyer. Quietly, discreetly. Asked the right questions. Gotten the answers I needed. She didn't have her own income. She hadn't contributed to the mortgage in over a year. All the big assets were in my name. The joint account had already been thinned, carefully, over weeks. And the best part? She hadn't even noticed. Because she'd been too busy looking elsewhere. But now, that attention was snapping back. The man who made her feel invisible was becoming invisible himself. She started staying home more. Less makeup. More questions. Her voice was softer. Not warm, tentative. She was trying to find her way back into a space she assumed would always be there. But the lock had already changed. Not physically. Emotionally. She couldn't read me anymore. And that terrified her more than any fight would have. Because silence is irreversible. I waited until a Tuesday. Not because it mattered. But because it didn't. She was at work. Or pretending to be. I didn't care. I opened the drawer where we kept our documents, passports, insurance papers, house records. Her name wasn't on most of them. That was never a power move. Just the way things had worked out. Now, it was an advantage. I scanned what I needed. Photocopied the rest. Left nothing disturbed. No signs of movement. Precision matters when you're dismantling something that once felt permanent. That evening, she came home to find me packing a small bag. Not luggage. Just a duffel. Calm, measured. She froze in the doorway. What's going on? I zipped the bag. Looked up. I'm leaving for a while, I said. Some space. Her lips parted. She didn't know whether to be angry or relieved. She tried confusion first. You're just going? I nodded. Where? Does it matter? She stepped forward. Not close enough to touch. Just far enough to pretend she wasn't reaching. So that's it. I paused at the door. No, I said. But it's the beginning of it. She didn't stop me. That's how I knew. She had no play left. No defense. No tears. No real questions. Only absence. Just like she wanted. Except now, she was on the receiving end. I didn't slam the door. Didn't look back. I drove 5 blocks before I even let my heart beat faster. Checked into a quiet rental. Short term. Paid in full. And for the first night in months, I slept. No tension in my jaw. No silent negotiations in the dark. Just stillness. She texted 3 times. First asking if I was okay. Then if I needed anything. Then, we should talk. I didn't respond. Because this wasn't a negotiation anymore. This was closure. I wasn't ghosting her. I was releasing her. The version of me that bent, that waited, that begged for connection, for clarity, for crumbs of affection, he wasn't coming back. She said she wanted to find herself. Now she'd have the space to do it. Without my shadow behind her. It's been 3 weeks. No confrontation. No meltdown. No dramatic chase through the rain. Just silence. She texted less now. The last one said, "I just need to understand what happened." But she already knew. There was no single moment. No one betrayal. Just the long erosion of something sacred. Worn down not by fire, but by neglect. Shrugs instead of answers. Distance instead of repair. 1,000 little exits before the door ever truly closed. I didn't block her. I didn't ghost her. I just stopped being available to the version of me she thought would always wait. I changed my mailing address. Opened a new account. Told the lawyer I was ready to proceed. Not out of rage. Out of clarity. Because this wasn't revenge. This was release. She wanted to be herself again. Not a wife. Not someone's responsibility. Not defined by the rhythm we built. Now she has that. A quiet apartment. An empty bed. Full control. She always said she felt caged. But the thing about cages is sometimes they're keeping you from the fall. And when they're gone, you realize it wasn't about walls. It was about balance. A few days ago, I passed by our old coffee shop. The one where we used to sit on Sundays, sharing headlines and inside jokes. I didn't go in. There was nothing left to retrieve. I don't hate her. I don't wish her harm. But I don't miss her either. Because love isn't just about feeling. It's about showing up. Over and over. Even when it's hard. Especially then. And when someone stops showing up, when they pull away and dare you to chase, it's not proof of strength. It's the start of their exit. She just didn't expect mine to be quieter. More permanent. Now, when people ask why we ended, I don't offer stories. I just say, we stopped speaking the same language. And eventually, I stopped translating. Drop it in the comments. Hit subscribe. This is where we talk about what doesn't get forgiven.